You mean I watch Saltburn for nothing? Despite the fact that I only ever talk about cartoons on this channel, it doesn't change that I am a big film nerd. And because I am a film nerd, every year I like to watch the Oscars. And I do realize that with the Oscars, it's something where we shouldn't really take them too seriously. I mean, I really don't. But for me, it's like my Super Bowl. Like, I like to get some snacks, some drinks, and just have a fun time watching it. For the most part, you're just there to watch celebrities embarrass themselves anyway. But despite the fact that I will joke about the Oscars, I think we all will joke about the Oscars, it doesn't change the fact that I do think there is some legitimacy to it, because the Oscars is a good way to bring attention to the aspects of filmmaking that often go ignored by the general public. It can also bring needed attention to films that wouldn't otherwise be getting it. And some people like me like to go back and check out like what won in previous years, which I think helps keep the film alive. In terms of the awards itself, I do have respect for it. But when it comes to the celebrities, well, that's where the beer comes in. But every year since I want to say like 2018, 19, I've made it my goal to watch every single Best Picture nominee and Best Animated Picture as well, but that's not what this video is about. I really should be watching documentaries though. That's always been like a big film blind spot for me. But I watched this year's nominees and I wanted to rank them, because that's what you do with movies, you rank them. I do expect viewers to disagree with some of my choices, and I will probably say something stupid during this video, but that's what these sort of videos are for. So this year there was a total of 10 nominees. I think they've been doing that since like 2009, starting with number 10. Let me just say, and people will disagree with me, there are no bad nominees this year. It's a rare occurrence where I found something to enjoy about all of them. And with that said, Maestro is still at the bottom of this list. People are probably expecting me to really tear this one apart, but to be frank with you, I had a good time with Maestro. It's a biopic about the lives of composer Leonard Bernstein and his wife Felicia Montelagre that aims to give them sort of a equal focus, so you learn both of their stories. You know, I keep wanting to call Bradley Cooper's character Maestro. Like, there he is, the titular Maestro. I feel like there is an attempt here to make the film more about his wife, and it ends up still feeling like Leonard is the main focus. Despite this, I do feel that Carey Mulligan kind of acts circles around Bradley Cooper. He isn't bad in this, but it's a combination of a thick accent and even thicker makeup that makes him hard to take seriously. I mean, the Oscars just love makeup. Like that, to me, that is the only reason this got all those nominations, because Bradley Cooper showed up, did a goofy voice, and wore some makeup. And I do think his performance can be at times hilarious, and I don't believe it was intentional. I mean, there's a line that I remember from the trailer where he's talking to his wife and he's like, "We're like two little ducks in a pond," and it's just the funniest shit. But yeah, a lot of the hate for this movie is directed towards Bradley Cooper, which, is he pretentious? Maybe. Is he desperate for an Oscar? Absolutely. I mean, that's why he directed, starred, wrote, and produced this. Like, dude, you're going a bit overboard there. But once you put all of that aside, I actually did find this to be a pretty effective drama. I learned more about Leonard Bernstein's life than I ever wished to know. As to how accurate it is, I don't know. I never know with these biopics. But I found this to be a pretty relaxing film. It's very nice looking. It's not without its problems, but it doesn't really deserve the hate that it's been getting. I do think it's a pretty enjoyable film. Number 9. So I debated heavily on this one because 8 and 9 on this list are pretty much a tie for me. But this is a ranking list, so I just kind of picked one and threw it here. Number 9 is American Fiction. This is a very enjoyable movie. It's a real crowd pleaser. It does feel to me kind of like a safe bet for a Best Picture choice, but not to the extent of Maestro, so I guess it's fine. Jeffrey Wright plays an author by the name of Monk, who realizes that books by Black authors tend to sell better when they play into stereotypes. He writes a book starting off as a joke until things get completely out of hand and he ends up with a Hollywood deal. There's really two movies going on at once here. There's the family drama, and then there's a satire that kind of focuses on how we view race today. I think both stories are well done, but they never really merge in a way that I would have liked them to. Jeffrey Wright is great as usual, and the movie is very funny, which surprised me because when I hear the words comedy, drama, oftentimes it's usually not that funny. I think the movie brings up a lot of interesting topics of discussion. It also leaves a lot of them pretty ambiguous, but it never really takes a clear stance. I don't think this is entirely a bad thing because it does leave the audience thinking. It ties into the ending too, which I did feel was pretty messy, but that's also kind of the point, so I guess I can't complain too much. I definitely do recommend this one. Like, there's little things I dislike about it, but for the most part, this is just a very enjoyable and well-made movie. Number 8. 8 is Barbie. The fact that this thing is nominated for Best Picture is like so f***ing weird. I'm not saying it's bad. I had a lot of fun with this movie, but this is not your typical Oscars movie. Like, this thing runs on cartoon logic. It's comparable to something like SpongeBob the movie. To me, this is like if Barry Sonnenfeld's Addams Family or the 90s Brady Bunch movie got Best Picture noms. Maybe they should have, you know? This does actually raise a lot of questions about the types of movies we give awards to. Like, why does a more prestigious film deserve an award more than something like this? There's that whole controversy going on with people saying that Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie were snubbed, which you could say that about any combination of movie and actor that came out last year. Like, I feel like the word snubbed is like so meaningless. But I think people are more mad about the fact that Ryan Gosling got a nomination, which, yeah, that does kind of prove the movie's point. Yet this film has 8 nominations. Like, how? That aside, I don't find this movie to be anything that deep. Not that there isn't a lot that it has to say. I think it does have quite a bit to say, both about being a woman and even being a man, but it doesn't feel quite as clever as some of Greta Gerwig's other films. But I did find the movie to be very funny, and I loved the outlandish production design. This movie succeeds at doing everything that it set out to do. I do have 3 blatant issues with the film. The main one is I don't think there's enough time spent in the outside world. Like, there's a lot of jokes that could be made that just aren't made, which is the exact same problem that the first Barry Sonnenfeld Addams Family movie had. The second, which is one a user on Twitter made me aware of, is that the movie does not address the target audience of Barbie. Like, it focuses on teens and adults and their connection to the doll, but where are the kids? Like, don't we get to learn more about what it means to them? And my third complaint is Chevy Blazer. But with a movie like this, I'm a lot more forgiving to it. And I think it's because I really think what the movie sets out to do is to just give audiences a fun time. And fun it delivers. Number 7, Past Lives. So people are like really passionate about this one. And I could see people being mad that I ranked this at like number 7. But I want you to know that the divide between something like this and Barbie is actually pretty huge. There are no flaws I can think of here. This is a beautifully crafted and just very simple romance, but it's also like no romance movie that I have seen before. It really addresses how relationships have sort of changed in the modern age, how we can still connect with people even years after we've known them through the internet. And this is one of those movies where the more I think about it, I think the more I realize why people love it. I think its approach just feels very real. And I do think I got a bit more out of the other films on this list. But like I said, I have really no complaints here. I think this is a wonderful movie. It is very much a film that everyone should check out. Number 6, Anatomy of a Fall. Why am I doing these hand motions? So this is like a French courtroom drama, and it won't be the last courtroom drama on this list. I mean, if you count Killers of the Flower Moon as one. So this is about a wife who is accused of murdering her husband while listening to the instrumental version of 50 Cent's Pimp. That's the real crime. This movie is just this simple debate of whether it was murder or suicide, which in the wrong hands could be something really dull. Like, this thing could have just been long and boring, and it was long, but I was fascinated the whole way through. And I think a lot of that is I liked the characters a lot here. I think the son's relationship to his mother is really what was the most interesting part to me, because even he is kind of suspicious of whether or not his mom would do such a thing. Yet that relationship between a mother and her son is still there. This movie definitely has some of the best performances of the year. Sandra Hüller was in both this and Zone of Interest this year, and she's just amazing in this movie. There's also Milo Machado Gaynor, who I think just does an excellent job here. It's like one of the great child actor performances, and yet he's still outacted by that damn dog who gives one of the best animal performances, if not the best animal performance that I've ever seen in a movie. This is a movie where they really just let the actors carry the movie. It's not a very showy film, but you do end up getting real invested in these characters. This was another great one, a strong, solid film worth checking out. Number 5. So The Holdovers was a big surprise this year. I remember people kept talking about the trailer and how sick they were of seeing it, which somehow I never saw. Like, I go to the theaters a lot, and not once did I see a Holdovers trailer. So it took me a while to get around to actually watching this movie, but I'm very glad that I did. I mean, this movie is just like a simple, very familiar concept about a group of people that dislike each other being stuck in one location. And of course, that forced proximity to one another kind of leads to them learning more about themselves and each other, which helps them to improve as people. And this is a comedy. There is a lot of funny moments in the film, but I think its strongest element is the drama. Even if it is overly familiar, the actors here do an incredible job at just bringing it to life. And the music and the cinematography, they all play a huge role in what makes this movie work. It really was, for me, the tone above all else that I enjoyed about this. It just has this comfy, cozy, sipping hot coffee by the fire in the middle of a snowstorm sort of feel to it. And it's really bizarre just how much tone can carry a film. But this feels like a movie that I would love to show to people. I mean, being a Christmas film, I probably will be showing it to people. So yeah, The Holdovers is surprisingly great. Definitely check that one out. Number 4, The Zone of Interest. I mentioned earlier how the Oscars can kind of help create buzz for films that wouldn't otherwise get it, and I believe Zone of Interest to be just an excellent example of that. So this is a Holocaust movie from Jonathan Glazer, the director of Under the Skin. But clearly a Holocaust movie won't have similar vibes to Under the Skin, will it? You know what? Actually, it's very clear it's the same director. This is the type of movie that I fully understand people calling pretentious. They're gonna watch this and say, nothing happens. Basically, you're just watching a German family during World War II, but that family happens to live next to a concentration camp. And I mean like right next to it. Like it's always there. This is a film that requires you pay close attention, but it's the little details that makes it so effective. The sound and the subtle visuals are just incredibly eerie. Like there's some impeccable sound design here. And if you really just immerse yourself in the film and its atmosphere, I think you'll find this to be the scariest and most unsettling film of the year. It's like a horror version of Gene Dealman, but thankfully shorter. This film is just beautifully shot. There's like great set design. Everything is just framed perfectly. And it's a very clear commentary on the horrors that happen around us that we simply just choose to ignore. I think the US siding with Israel in their conflict with Gaza is obviously a most unfortunate and very real example of that today. But so much of what this film succeeds at, it just does through atmosphere, the visuals and sounds. Like you'll hear the screams of victims coming from the camp, but it's just quiet enough where you can barely make it out. I could not imagine watching this like at home. Like this is a movie that feels like it has to be seen in the theater. But I found Zone of Interest to be wonderfully horrific and sad, and I think it's a film that I will be thinking about for a very long time. Number 3, Poor Things. Another Yorgos Lanthimos home run. So Yorgos Lanthimos is like one of my favorite modern filmmakers, and I feel pretentious every time I say that name. But I just love his incredibly dry comedy. Like, it's something that you would think would get old after a while, but he always finds a way to keep it fresh. Poor Things is, in many ways, a remake of Frank Henenlotter's Frankenhooker.
Want a date? You going out? No thanks. I'm on my way home, but thanks anyway.
Okay, there's a lot more to it than that, but the similarities are there. Much like Barbie, Poor Things is really about a woman finding themselves in the world, but deals with a lot more explicit adult themes, a lot of it involving sexuality. And once again, in the wrong hands, this could have been an absolute disaster. But Yorgos, with his sense of humor, I think makes this all work. This is actually the funniest movie I saw last year. Like, all the actors in this are great. I think Mark Ruffalo gives one of the funniest performances of the year in this. But it's just a beautifully shot film with great production design. Frankenstein is obviously the main inspiration for this, but there's also like a storybook type look to it, kind of a mix of classic Hollywood and I want to say Dr. Seuss. Supposedly the artwork of Albert Robida was one of the main inspirations for this. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I think any other year this would be my favorite because I like these kind of up movies. But I found this thing to be just extremely creative. I had a lot of fun with it and I want to watch it again. Number 2. So these next two movies may as well have been tied. I actually do believe this film to be technically the better movie than number 1, if that makes any sense. And that film is Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. Scorsese somehow does the impossible here and delivers one of his best films. He's a director who has never been above portraying his protagonists as awful people, which I think confuses a lot of people, which I've never really understood. Like, why can't we have a protagonist that's an awful person? It makes the film more interesting. But this one really takes it like to the next level. In this movie, we follow the real-life Osage murders as Robert De Niro's character orchestrates a plan to steal the money they've obtained from their oil. I really think this is the most that Scorsese has ever delved into the evil in the hearts of men, specifically white men in this case. But it's about this like endless greed and lust for power that so many of them have. And I think this movie strikes this really perfect balance of showing them to be competent idiots that just got very lucky. There's a lot of darkly humorous aspects to the movie, but it still felt like the Osage people were being treated with the respect that they deserved. Of course, I do say that as a white man. But I think that Scorsese made it quite clear in interviews and even in the movie itself that he wanted to make us aware of these horrible tragedies in history and kind of address how so many of them just go forgotten. Like, the abuse of indigenous people is something that is still felt today, and a lot of us just choose to ignore it. Lily Gladstone is outstanding in this movie. Leo does a pouty face. I mean, he's not bad, he's good, but I've seen other performances by him I liked a lot more. But I really loved this one. I think it's a perfect movie, but I will have to watch it again soon if I can ever find the time for it. You see, there's the runtime joke. You didn't think you were getting out of an Oscars ranking video without a runtime joke. There'll be plenty more of that to come at the event itself. Number 1. Never in my life did I expect a Christopher Nolan movie to be my favorite film of the year. I mean, to be fair, I do love The Dark Knight, and I do enjoy most of his movies. But Oppenheimer somehow manages to sort of utilize his trademarks while feeling like nothing he's made before. And this movie I know has been talked about to death. Like, this and Barbie were clearly the biggest movies of the year. And I don't think there's a lot I can really add to the discussion, but every single aspect of filmmaking, I think, comes together beautifully here. This is another example where the story could have been incredibly boring, but he manages to make it exciting. This really does feel like a 3-hour-long trailer, and I've seen a lot of people use that as a complaint about it, but I strongly disagree. I loved that about it, and I enjoyed a lot of goofier aspects of the movie, like the way that Einstein was treated like a superhero cameo every time he appeared. I do think this is a very effective historical drama. There were some scenes where I wish they turned the music down a bit, but the music in the film is very good, so I can't complain too much. And the movie really gains momentum as it goes. I think I was a bit worried at first that once that bomb went off, everything would be boring afterward, but the last hour of this movie is some of the best stuff in it. But I just really enjoyed this one, and I kind of doubt that we'll see another Christopher Nolan movie as good as this for a while. or maybe ever. It seems to be a clear Oscar winner, and sometimes an Oscar is really all you need. Watch like Barbie's gonna win now because I said that. Anyway, that about wraps it up. Feel free to express your anger in the comments. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video or would like to watch similar videos like it in the future. I will see you at the Oscars. I won't actually be there. I wasn't invited.